Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Today, I'm talking with Denverite reporter Kyle Harris about two stories he's written recently about Denver's unhoused community and how the city is approaching the issue. Kyle, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, Kyle, let's start with this profile you wrote of Suzanne Elaine McKinney and her yellow Mitsubishi Eclipse. Who is Suzanne?
Well, Suzanne is an attorney who's no longer allowed to practice, who has been living in her car on Marion Parkway in the Washington Park neighborhood for the past 10 years. She is an incredibly smart, incredibly energetic person who has really been frustrating some of the neighbors and inspiring other neighbors to take action to try to get her into housing, which is something that so far she has refused.
So you've kind of just laid it out, but I have seen Suzanne myself walking to Wash Park. I've seen her car parked there for over a decade. And I think there's this really interesting juxtaposition there of seeing an unhoused person in Washington Park. And I feel like that is a little bit of what is imbued with this story here. But you mentioned this, the neighborhood is sort of at odds about her existing there. Can you describe a little bit more of this? What is going on? What is the neighborhood really fighting over with the situation with Suzanne in her car?
Absolutely. I'm glad you put it in that way. And just to give you a picture of the neighborhood, you have homes that are there that are kind of upper middle class homes where people once really able to afford to live, like working people, teachers, nurses, that sort of thing. But over the years, those have become quite expensive homes. So that's on one side of Marion Parkway. And then on the other are these massive mansions. Someone told me that the Chipotle founder may have lived there. I'm not totally sure about that. But you have incredible wealth in this community. And then you have a person who's living in this kind of beat up car. For neighbors, some of them have really found Suzanne to be like an incredible friend. There's one neighbor, Terry, who just absolutely loves her, is able to talk to her about almost anything in the world, stuff she's not able to talk to other people about. So she's found a real connection there. Other neighbors have found Suzanne frustrating because sometimes she screams or yells. It's important to note that for the last 3 years, she really hasn't had working vision. And not being able to see has meant that when people approach her car and knock on her window, she's often really scared when she initially hears someone coming because she doesn't know who that person's going to be. So there are times where she has been yelling because that's her defense mechanism against people who she doesn't know. So she may be yelling at someone who's there or not there. She's also a pretty heavy smoker. Neighbors have expressed concern about stuff like her trash or her urine or other things that they view as real detriments to their quality of life.
So you've got these two sides of these neighbors and this woman at the center of the situation. And as you mentioned, she's lost her vision because of cataracts, which has maybe exacerbated her situation a little bit. But I wonder, like I said, I've seen Suzanne there for over a decade. What brought this story to your attention?
I got a phone call from Amy Beck, who's a homelessness advocate who, was getting really frustrated. She had been trying to work with Suzanne, work with the neighbors. She had been kind of called in through, I'm not exactly sure how she connected to the situation, but she was so frustrated. And I was on a late night walk and we ended up talking for I think a couple of hours about the situation. And I said, I would love to write about this because it has all the conflicts that are going on in our broader city in this one block. And I love that kind of story. At first, she thought Suzanne wouldn't really want to talk to me, but I ended up going down there. Suzanne had, for a short time, was staying behind Terry, her friend's house. And
she'd moved her car from the Marion Parkway spot to behind her friend's house in the neighborhood. Okay.
Exactly. She'd gotten a ton of tickets. The police were threatening to impound her. So she had moved back there. But other neighbors were really frustrated with her presence and really pushed Terry to have her leave the property. So I came there the day that they were actually trying to get her to move her car. And Suzanne and I connected right away. We had just a really nice bond. We started talking about um, her experience working for the Veterans Benefits Administration. And, she told me a story about how she blew the whistle and on them. And around that time, really started in her mind being stalked by them. She claims that she was shot in the head by a VBA employee. There are x-rays from a hospital that dispute that. She disputes the x-rays. But we ended up talking for like 2 hours about this conspiracy that she deeply believes in. And at the same time, the neighbors are there trying to get her to move and end up moving her car back to Marion Parkway, where they were fully aware that Denver police would likely boot it and likely put kind of an impoundment process in place. So, I told her right off the bat, I don't really write about federal government stuff. I write about homelessness. I write about housing, city politics, and that's going to be my focus. And she was good with that. But yeah, that's how we met. And then I kept visiting her for a month and some change as she went through this kind of epic journey, being kind of punted around the city or getting herself towed, actually.
I want to get a little more into that journey in a minute, but I just wonder, you spent time with Suzanne. She told you this incredible story. Like you said, she's an attorney. What do you think, or I guess, what did you glean from Suzanne, or did she explain to you how she got there in the first place? How does someone who's an attorney end up living in their car in Denver?
Well, so interestingly, Suzanne had lived in a townhome with a family member about a block away from where she stays in her car. She had moved to other parts of the city in between, but after her kind of whistleblowing moment at the VBA, where she accused the agency of identity theft and some other stuff, she really decided she would be safer living in her car. She has sued the federal government for retaliation around that whistleblowing case, and decided that she could hide out in her car and be kind of removed from what she believes is this sort of like massive pressure campaign against her. So a family member kind of said that around that time she really had a kind of mental break, which she denies, and that's how she wound up living there.
This episode is brought to you by the Clifford Still Museum. Stimulate your senses at the Clifford Still Museum. Experience abstract visual language through sound in the new exhibition, Still in Sound. Discover how contemporary sound artists interpret Still's paintings with original sound compositions. Enjoy Celebrating 15 Years, 15 New Paintings in 15 Months, a new feature exhibition that unveils one never-before-seen Clifford Still painting each month. Upcoming events include First Friday Pay What You Wish Days, SCFD Free Days, meditation sessions, guided tours, behind-the-scenes experiences, hands-on workshops, family art making, infant art crawls, outdoor music performances, and so much more. Immerse yourself in joy this summer. The Still is open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday through Thursday and Saturday through Sunday, with special summer Friday hours from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Children 17 and under are always free. Learn more at cliffordstillmuseum.org. That's cliffordstillmuseum.org. This episode is brought to you by Sphere of Six. Denver, we all have that one person we text when we need a recommendation. Do you know a good plumber? Who did your fence? Wait, who cleans your house again? That kind of word of mouth is much better than scrolling through random reviews from strangers. And that's exactly the idea behind Sphere of Six. Sphere of Six is a new app that helps you find local service providers through people you actually know and trust. Instead of relying on anonymous star ratings or paid listings, you can see which pros are connected to your trusted network. This is especially helpful around the Denver metro, where everyone is always looking for a contractor, a house cleaner, a landscaper, or someone who actually shows up when they say they will. Sphere of Six just launched, so now is the time to get in early, build your sphere, and recommend the local pros you already love. Visit sphereof6.com to sign up online. That's sphereofsix.com. Sphere of Six. Who's in your sphere? So this story was published about 2 weeks ago. Do you know what the status is of Suzanne's situation now?
Yes. So we can break a little news here, I think, which is that yesterday, she the story ends. I'll give you a little spoiler. The story ends with her getting her first cataract surgery and being able to see a little bit and kind of calming down and beginning to think about some possibilities other than maybe living in her car. She had a second cataract surgery scheduled. It got rescheduled. Yesterday, in fact, she had cataract surgery on the second eye. And I spoke to one of her friends who told me that she is like seeing well. She is very calm, still staying in her car. But, just that ability to see has been like an incredible gift to her that has just shifted things. So we don't, I can't say, where Suzanne's headed next. I know that she is uh, eager to explore possibilities. I think she wants to work again. I think she really wants to find some housing that she can pay for her own, on her own. She doesn't really want to be in a shelter or, subsidized housing, but she sees possibility there, and she's very, very excited about it, from what I've understood.
You sort of posed two questions that are related to what you just said in your story. You said, how do you help people experiencing homelessness who do not want what you have to offer? And under what conditions, if any, should people who pose no immediate threat be stripped of their independence and forced into services? Do you feel like you got answers to either of those questions in working on this story?
Well, isn't that a great question? I mean, that's sort of the nut. And I don't think if I had answers, I would probably be in a different profession helping people. I don't have great answers to those questions. What I can say is that, there were a lot of different approaches to helping Suzanne. There were people who raised money in the neighborhood, raised thousands of dollars. I think I last heard $9,000 to help her initially buy a new car, but then they decided not to do that. They paid off her tickets so that she could park street legal and paid for the eye surgery with that money. There are neighbors who really wanted the police to intervene. And I talked to Commander Joel Bell, who, his team has been working with Suzanne over the years. And Commander Bell was like, every day we think today might be the day we can help her and offer her something. The STAR team, the support,
Support team assisted response?
Excellent. Yes, I have to look it up every time, and you're pretty close, if not dead on. Support team assisted response, which is the unarmed non-police response to emergency calls. They came out. They couldn't really help her. Gave her a hand warmers at one point. She towed herself to a Quaker congregation that, in some ways, really wanted to help her, but ultimately didn't allow her to stay there. Other neighbors are furious, and they think she should be, taken by the police against her own will and forced into mental health treatment and forced into housing. We do not have laws that allow that to be a possibility. We have laws that protect individual liberty and autonomy in general. And so, there aren't great legal mechanisms to force someone into housing. And there were many, many offers and opportunities for her to accept that, but she didn't feel safe in it. So what I can say is, like, this is a conversation our community is having. That's an ongoing discussion, an ongoing debate. There are people of strong beliefs on multiple sides of this one. But in terms of like a broader consensus in Denver, I don't think we're there.
What did she tell you about not wanting to, quote, go inside? Or I think sometimes folks in this situation are described as like service resistant, or
Right.
What was Suzanne's perspective? What did she share with you about not wanting to take those steps that were, or these things that these opportunities, however you want to put it, that may have been offered to her?
Well, there were two key things. One is that she didn't feel safe in the shelters. She was afraid she would be murdered, she would be raped, and she didn't feel like she could assess the safety because she couldn't see.
Sure.
So that was a big piece of it. For a couple of weeks there, I was probably the only person she trusted because I was the only person not pushing some sort of shelter on her. I was there to listen and observe. The other reason is that, she has had this legal case against the federal government that a judge dismissed. She says it's still ongoing. I couldn't confirm that. But she has legal documents in the car that she wants to protect and didn't feel safe bringing those into a shelter and wants to be there with them. So there are really two reasons that she described. And also, she has a concern about going into the shelters and being brought into the kind of homeless service apparatus where there are many people who are dealing with active addiction, who are dealing with um, acute mental health issues. And her fear was that if she doesn't use drugs, she doesn't drink, but her fear is that being around some of those dimensions of other people might make her life actually much harder than just staying in her car.
Which I will put a link in the show notes. Your colleague Kevin Beatty took these incredible photos that made me
They're
see.
amazing.
They made me see her differently. I have to be honest with you. But something that you described in her living situation with her car is it's a coffin-like situation. I mean, she is packed into a Mitsubishi Eclipse is not a big car to begin with, and it is full to the brim. But she feels that this is a safer place for her.
Absolutely. I mean, what's fascinating is like normally when I'm covering someone who's living in a car, who's in tight quarters, I will try to sit in the car with them. But there was simply no room for that in this case. So I ended up standing by her car, which was not how I normally approach reporting. Like I like to be with someone in
Their level. Yeah.
at their level, whatever that might be. So yeah, I mean, her car is absolutely tight, and I would call it a sports car. I'm no car expert, but it is like a sporty little vehicle that's super
It's a coupe.
compact.
Yeah.
And she has a ton of stuff in there and is really like cocooned in there. And coffin, cocoon is maybe the optimistic way I should have described it. That could have foreshadowed a nice ending that didn't exactly come in the story. But
Well, and we're, I guess, still waiting to see what ends up happening, right? I mean, like you said, she's kind of still in this limbo that maybe the surgery has helped with her being able to see. And I mean, just moving things along.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say where she's going to go or what's next for her or how all of the various issues she deals with will play out. But I can say, that, and this gets to the question of like, how do you help someone?
Yeah.
From Suzanne's perspective, you help someone by offering them the things that they want, right? Like if she doesn't want housing right now or shelter, then for her, that is not an appropriate demand to make of her, right? From her perspective. But maybe eye surgery in her case was something she really craved. And man, the Washington Park neighbors who donated to that campaign really made that possible. And that was transformative for her. So I think there's a sense that like you see someone who's having a hard time and you want to like snap your fingers and everything's fixed. That is not how human beings work. I mean, I think about myself, like, you have a doctor tell you, you need to like cut back on your cholesterol or something like that. Well, go to hell,
I was like, my doctor has told me that, Kyle, and I am currently in that. I have that same attitude. Like, oh, really? You want me to stop drinking milk? Okay, fine.
Exactly. But if you like, if I kind of decide, hey, I need to like really cut back on this thing or do this thing to take care of my health, I might be more likely to land on that conclusion that that's a good thing for me by coming to it on my own time. And so I think like, there aren't many people who respond to anger, pressure, judgment well. Like you don't want to be told, well, your lawn's a mess, so you better cut it. Well, then you're going to resent cutting it. But like there are ways of talking to people and working with people that maybe involve patience and involve working with people on their own terms that have, in many cases, led to more positive outcomes. And I will say, I didn't write about them a lot in the story, but I did have the chance to watch some city workers from Host do their thing during Suzanne's eye surgery. And good God, like they were so good at building slow trust. And they have all this pressure from the neighborhood, like the city needs to fix this situation. And wow, like watching their patience and willingness to build a relationship was just something so cool to see. And I didn't write about it, and I probably shouldn't be talking about it because it was tenuous to actually be in the same space with them, and I wanted to make sure they could do their work. But it was very impressive to see that kind of slow, patient process. And it's something I think, we got a mayor who is trying to end street homelessness, and he's brought a lot of people inside. Some of those people have stayed. Some of those people are on a path to housing. But there are a lot of people who are still outside. And for many of those folks, like patience is this key ingredient that our society doesn't have a lot of. They're like,
Yeah.
why don't you just sweep the thing away? And it's like, well, they're like complicated issues, economic issues, mental health, physical health, systemic issues of poverty that, is sort of systemic will to allow poverty to exist that creates this vast set of conditions that makes patience absolutely necessary, right, in having any progress for some folks.
Well, let's talk about another story you did that I think touches on a different aspect of the same thing, which is how we as a city and also the city itself as a mechanism deals with our unhoused neighbors. And so the second story you did was you took a look at Mutual Aid Monday and this fight that this group is having with the city over they do a weekly meal and sort of a social services meetup where like they offer basic services like getting a haircut and helping just giving people basic toiletries and things. It's a very grassroots organization and they've been meeting in front of the city and county building every Monday night for about 6 years now. And recently, the city has asked this group to move locations or get a permit to do that. The group has refused to do either of these things. Kyle, what did you learn about why Mutual Aid Monday doesn't really want to play ball with the city?
And so Mutual Aid Monday defines itself as a protest. That is a really basic tenet of the organization. Mutual Aid Monday came out of the George Floyd protests in 2000. Their goal has been to be at once doing like really direct action in the sense that they are helping people, they are, bringing folks food, all the things that you were just describing. And then at the same time, they're doing some things that rub up against city priorities. So, Denver has an urban camping ban. Johnston's made it a priority to get rid of encampments by bringing people inside, but also through enforcement. Well, Mutual Aid Monday makes sure people have tents and sleeping bags and survival gear to stay alive and stay warm. That's very different than Johnston's strategy, right? Go into a hotel, go into a shelter. So
I would say it almost goes against it because he's trying to get folks not to be camping outside and
absolutely.
And they're just giving folks supplies to essentially do that.
Exactly. And so on the one hand, Johnston has visited Mutual Aid Monday a couple of years ago, allegedly brought his son down there, which is kind of interesting. But at the same time, I think, in a city where it's trying to brag about how it's reduced unsheltered homelessness, is on a crusade to end unsheltered homelessness in the next couple of years here, looking at a giant group of like 300, 400, 500 people in front of City Hall is, and people experiencing homelessness, in many cases street homelessness, rubs up against the mayor's branding and messaging. And so the folks at Mutual Aid Monday, they feel like, the mayor wants them gone in part of his campaign to kind of make visible homelessness go away. Right.
I will say too, on the way they describe themselves as a protest, this Mutual Aid Mondays aligns time wise with city council's weekly meeting.
Absolutely.
When they're making decisions about the city and things like that. And I understand that is intentional. I think in part, I think you described this. They say so folks can go in and maybe if they want to speak to city council about an issue directly, they're already there. So I think that's just important to point out that there's an intention behind this group's placement and timing when they provide these services.
Absolutely important to point out. And if you're like me and you geek out watching public comment every week at city council, you'll notice that there is often a voice from the unhoused community and sometimes multiple voices, families, individuals, people talking about the issues they're facing on the streets. Those people are often there because of Mutual Aid Monday.
Sure. So in your story, it seems like city officials have pointed to issues of trash, crime broadly as potential problems that could be blamed or connected to Mutual Aid Monday's presence there. In your reporting, did you see evidence of that?
Well, so there were two things that John Ewing, who's the mayor's spokesperson, brought up. One is this question of trash. it gets dirtier there after Mutual Aid Monday happens. Now, if you talk to the volunteers, what they'll tell you is they work really hard to make the space that they've been in look better than it did before they got there. They clean up afterwards, and they even bring volunteers back on Tuesday morning after the event to do like one more pass of cleaning. So from their perspective, no, they keep it clean. I will say I didn't see a whole lot of signs of filth or dirtiness or anything like that while I was there on Monday. The second thing that happened was there was a city this was 2 weeks ago, a city worker's tires were slashed on the city-owned truck. So they were citing this as a reason that Mutual Aid Monday needed a permit. What's interesting is that neither Denver Police Department nor the mayor's office could actually show me any concrete evidence that the person there had anything to do with Mutual Aid Monday. The organizers certainly weren't aware of the person, and there just hasn't been a whole lot of evidence. So, like, a crime can happen at the same time as an event can happen. That does not mean the two things are necessarily connected. The city really wants the permit because, their argument is there's just a consistency argument between different organizations that require permits to do things in parks. And they say if you have a protest that's occurring regularly, you need a permit. Legally speaking, the organizers disagree. And I think that some of that stuff would have to play out in court for us to really know the answer.
Well, yeah, let's get into that a little bit because that's what city officials are saying, right? Is they can do this. We just would like them to do this in an official way, to ask for a permit. Why is Mutual Aid Monday not want to go the permit route?
Well, so if you get a permit, from Mutual Aid Monday's perspective, that gives the organization less control, over less autonomy. The city, if it's giving permission, can also take that permission away, right? So if you are protesting the city, do you really want permission to protest from a First Amendment perspective? That's the kind of question that they're asking. Yeah.
Okay. So it can kind of sort of change the meaning, or I guess, who has control over that situation, or what rules apply to a protest versus a permitted event, which,
exactly,
to be fair, are two very different things.
Very different things. And if you give someone permission, and if you allow someone to give you permission, you also grant them the right to take the permission away. And that is a type of power that I think Mutual Aid Monday appears to oppose.
What if they told you is their plan then going forward? Because again, this has been going on for 6 years, every Monday. It's completely volunteer run. What does Mutual Aid Monday say what's their plan in the near future?
Well, I think things are tense there, and they're concerned that there could be some sort of police action against them. They're concerned there could be some sort of city action against them. They wouldn't tell me the concrete plans they have, but they do have plans to oppose any attempt to move the event. What's interesting is, like you said, 6 years is a long time not to have a permit, to have this event going on, to have politicians show up to the event. I think they're concerned that the city is kind of escalating a conflict that may not need to exist at all. A big part of this also has to do with moving across the street. So in the past, they were in front of the city and county building. They've moved to the parks, to Civic Center Park. And Civic Center Park has a different set of rules and regulations, a different set of people making decisions about it. There's a huge landscaping project in front of City Hall. I was going to say
Civic Center Park is also under construction.
It's under construction, and there's a landscaping right in front of City Hall. So Mutual Aid Monday also hopes they can just move back across Bannock Street to their old area and sort of forego this whole issue. So we'll see what happens. It's a little bit of a stalemate.
These two stories really, you've reported on the unhoused community and homelessness issues for a long time here in Denver. And I wonder, just looking at these two stories, as you've mentioned, the mayor vowed in his first term to solve unsheltered homelessness. And these two stories just look at different aspects of the unhoused situation in Denver right now. I just wonder if there's some bigger takeaway for you, or something that you were seeing in these stories as you were reporting them, about the state of how we're dealing with unhoused folks, but how unhoused folks are feeling in Denver in 2026.
I think there are a couple things. One takeaway is that, and I've gotten a lot of emails about the Suzanne story from people all over the country. And one of the things that they've said, and that I firmly believe is like, it's so cool to see everyday people trying to help people in their own community, right? In this city, we have heard a lot from government about government's role in solving homelessness, right? And we've spent, as a city, hundreds of millions of dollars doing this with mixed results. Now, it is incredible to see just everyday people show up for their neighbors, care for their neighbors, not based on whether those neighbors are property owners or renters or live in their car or live on the street, but because they're human beings worthy of dignity and love and care. So, like, to me, that's one big takeaway is there is a mob of people filled with love for their neighbors. That is a cool thing, right? Like that to me is, as a journalist, I'm often in the role of the observer, which is hard sometimes because you want to be in the role of like helping folks out. And man, it is so inspiring to see that. So that's one takeaway. Takeaway two is that, and the mayor understands this. Solving street homelessness is an extraordinary challenge. And there are multiple factors that play into it, from housing, affordability, addiction, mental health issues, physical health issues. I mean, you think about cancer as a sentence that almost, for many people, leads to eviction, leads to homelessness, right? I mean, just like horrific things. There's a lot that's outside of local government's control, right? Poverty in this country is not something Mike Johnston can fix, right? And so if there's any hope for all of us, and I include myself in this, right, getting through these lives that we have to show up for each other. And like seeing Denver do that is just seeing Denverites do that, seeing residents do that is such a beautiful, cool thing. And I have to say, like, the political aspirations, the government work that's done on these issues is massive and sweeping and dramatic. But sometimes just like a small act of kindness, or in other cases, a small act of unkindness can be just as profound.
Kyle Harris, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, Bree.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Mutual Aid Monday about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.